Salute, ladies and gentlemen. The New York Knicks pick up a big win on the road. Here to talk about it with my man EJ. The Knicks win 121-102 in Charlotte for their third straight victory. We're going to talk about it, give out grades, look at the road ahead. How are we doing, brother?
Doing well, my man CT. It's a Friday night here. No, it's a Saturday where you are, but whether it's a Friday night or a Saturday night, anytime the Knicks win, it's a good time. So I'm feeling really good, feeling really nice. Have my water in my cup, feeling hydrated, feeling real good. How about yourself, buddy?
Absolutely, yep. Friday night, Knicks, the feeling's right.
Absolutely.
Salute to Replay Gang, salute to Nick Streets, and the Knicks are buzzing right now. Smash the like button. You already know what it is. Yeah, EJ, the Knicks are on a 3-game win streak right now. Change things up with a shortened rotation, trade buzz swirling as well.
Yeah.
Well, it feels good, though, to win again, 3 in a row now. And we'll talk about, like I said in the last show, I feel like the Knicks have hit a fork in the road for this season. And we're really seeing something different, buckling down. Every player tonight was in the plus. So it was a wire-to-wire victory. What are your initial impressions?
Hey, listen, when the first and second quarters were developing and playing on, I had some moments of concern. Charlotte is a team that has so many injuries and so many key injuries that the announcers spent the entire night talking about how Charlotte is a depleted team. And there were moments during the first half where you felt as if the Knicks were kind of sluggish, that this is a team that they could have put away early. But then again, you have to remember who the Knicks are and the fact that they were able to turn it on in the third quarter and the fourth quarter. And usually when we talk about the third quarter with the Knicks, it's a third quarter disaster. It's a quarter disaster. But thankfully, and with the exception of Mitch really hustled first and second quarter, and I know we'll get to that. But third quarter, fourth quarter, you saw a lot more energy. You saw a lot more buzz because they knew that we were going to be buzzing tonight. And a win is a win is a win. And this now makes 3 in a row. And that leads to a lot of questions, at least a lot of interesting topics to discuss. But the Knicks are in the middle of a playoff chase, a playoff hunt. This is weird. Again, but we'll take the win.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in the thick of the season right now. We're past the quarter-way mark, and we're really heading into that make it or break it stage where, teams start to decide what they're going to do, EJ and Fam, for the season.
Yeah.
They decide what they're going to do in terms of trades, and are they going to be close enough to contend and compete? The Knicks obviously now are in that boat. They decided that, and we'll talk about the Obi Toppin injury and the implications of that. But obviously Cam Reddish, Derrick Rose, Evan Fournier now officially out of the rotation for good. There was talk with Obi going down. Could Cam get in? But I really feel like the Knicks made their decision already with Cam, and they're looking to find him a new home. Yeah. And what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that situation before we just dive in deeper into tonight's win?
Yeah, tonight was a very interesting. As soon as they made the decision, as soon as Thibs made the decision and the front office made the decision, of course we find out that OB is injured and will be out for a couple of weeks, and that raises the question: are you going to go back on your word? Knowing the way that the Garden operates, knowing that the way that the front office operates with our time discussing issues with Berman and other reporters, you know that the Garden is very interested in protecting their public face. They're very interested in maintaining like this persona of this is what we said. We want to limit as much public outcry and discourse so that they know that there's a Cam hive. They know that there are fans out there who love Cam, that they really want to see Cam play, that he's a great mystery in terms of his ceiling, what he can be as a potential player, how he is exciting at times on defense, and his ability to score in the most interesting and creative of ways. But I think that the die has already been cast in terms of Cam and what his role and what he's going to be in terms of the New York Knicks. I think in the near future, he will be a former New York Knicks. And I think we kind of have to remember, all of us as fans, he had exciting moments. When the season started, after the preseason, we on this podcast and many other Knicks content creators, they pretty much had slotted Cam to being out of the rotation or having a limited role as best. And we didn't expect it to end up this way, but this is
Yep.
where the path went. So it's unfortunate, but it's likely that he also wants, at this point in his career, he wants to have more minutes, and that's not going to happen here with this team. What do you think, CT?
Yeah, a bit of like I think I said this on the last show too. It was such an weird start to the season. You know, we felt, or I felt Grimes was that guy that they preferred from the get go, but the injury opened things up for Cam, and then
Hmm.
people fell in, enamored with Cam, and he did some great things, and it sort of helped the Knicks, I guess, with some trade value as well. But
Yeah,
ultimately, all along, I sort of felt, Grimes is still that guy, and Cam is still at best that guy off the bench for the Knicks in
yeah,
terms of what the front office prefers. And we sort of got our wish that Evan Fournier was out of the rotation early this season,
yeah.
and it's still a bit surprising to this day that they're willing to move on from Cam so quickly, rather than just have a longer look for the rest of the season. But I ain't mad with it, and I want to see a longer sample size. But we're looking good right now. We're consistent with the defense. Deuce
Hmm.
McBride in
Oh yeah,
quickly and Grimes. Yep.
yeah.
Um, this Titan rotation, this unit is really, playing hard on both sides of the floor, and that's what I really wanted. We texted and I said, Deuce adds a bit of toughness, and
Yeah,
Cam's
yeah,
Cam's a bit more finesse, and I feel
yeah,
like this roster has enough finesse.
yeah. Especially with Obi on the floor.
Yeah.
Deuce has a motor about him. Even when you took a look at the fourth quarter tonight, he's hustling back on defense. His lateral quickness. There's something about like his energy on defense where he's going to try to make something happen defensively. I think Andrew mentioned this in the chat that it's not just about the energy in
Mm.
terms of the offense, but the energy in terms of the defense, and really that being the hallmark of what this team was about a couple of seasons ago and why they were able to make a playoff push. So it's really exciting to see that. In terms of Cam, we talk a lot about the psychology and the philosophies of front offices and how that differentiates between what happens with that and what happens on the court. This front office, you could argue, and there are plenty of Knicks fans who argue that they waited too long to make moves with Julius. They could have made moves with Julius after his excellent season a couple of years ago. Um, it might be that with Cam, because the mystery adds to a level of value, he left a little bit that was so tantalizing that they kind of came to the decision, well, maybe we're not going to hold on to him. Maybe we're not going to extend him in a couple of years. So this might be the best
Mm.
opportunity to move him. He's shown some flashes. Maybe, hopefully, we can recoup something of value. It may not be the pick that we sent off to Atlanta, but better to trade early than to trade later where he might be exposed for his limitations. So maybe that's the play.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the reason why they ultimately came to the decision out of the rotation, preserve his value, and perhaps send him off earlier to get a better recoup in terms of trading.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think, they're paying RJ Barrett big money. They have obviously big intentions to pay Quentin Grimes
Yeah.
money. So it comes down to the odd man out, I think. And I think he had some great games, but still inconsistencies.
Hmm.
This front office has to be scared, committing money to a player that's inconsistent still. I mean, especially when there's been a lot of money doled out. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good
there's
point.
there's a lot of money doled out right now. Mitch, RJ, Randall, Brunson, like I said, Obi, quickly, Grimes,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about quickly. And we'll give out a grade, but he's playing really well. But they're going
Hmm.
to have to make a financial decision on him. To me, the Obi thing is very, very unfortunate. I mean, looks like he's going to be out 4 weeks, probably minimum, to play it safe. It's interesting what they're going to do. And tonight we saw a bit of, Jericho get in and Hartenstein.
Interesting
Great
combo.
performance, yeah, from Hartenstein, but it's really going to hurt our offense off the bench.
Hmm.
Um, so it's interesting, what do they look for in a Cam trade? We'll talk about that a little bit more. But after tonight, let's chop up, the standouts from tonight. RJ Barrett, Julius Randle's performance, EJ,
Yeah.
super efficient. Randle was 36 minutes, 9 of 21, 4 of 10 from three, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, plus
Yeah.
17,
Yeah.
33 points.
Yeah.
and RJ was 35 minutes right behind him, 9 of 18, one of the most efficient nights from RJ. Only shot three balls, which I like. Didn't
Yeah.
shoot as many three attempts. But 4 assists I like from RJ, plus 17, 26 points.
Yeah. Yeah. When RJ and Julius are going to ball out in this way, chances are you're going to win.
Mm.
And particularly when you're playing
Yep.
against a team like Charlotte. Charlotte is one of those teams where, at first, and in my notes when I was writing notes for tonight's podcast, one of the things I said is that this is a team that you should have taken care of early, put away early, but it's also the kind of squad you get kind of scared of because, earlier in the season, and not just too long ago, you had players who are having the biggest nights of their careers, like, Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons. Terry Rozier is that kind of player that if he plays against the Knicks, you fear he's going to have an all-world, all Hall of Fame, like, greatest top 50 kind of night. Same thing with Kelly Oubre. You can just imagine him going off, but it was rather Julius going off. It was RJ going off, and that's really good. Now, was it all 4 quarters? No. Obviously, Clyde talked about how they had some difficulty in terms of their transportation. Maybe that contributed them to the getting off to a sluggish start. But again, I like the fact that they were in control and the fact that you felt like, especially in the second half, the game
Mm.
wasn't in doubt.
Yep, absolutely. We've got to point out too, Charlotte as well, not missing a heap of players.
Hmm.
But we took care of business like we did. It was a bit of a grind in the first quarter, second quarter. The Knicks rallied, kept it kept strong, played some D, and blew it out eventually. But I think the story for this season, which I keep saying, is the minutes are
Yeah.
pretty evenly distributed. I mean, we're not really seeing Randle play any more than 36 minutes
Hmm.
on every night, and I think that's helping his ability to finish out games better.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me even ask you this question then. What did you
Mm.
think of, and I'll just jump straight to it because I think this is definitely going to be a talking point and all over Nick's social spaces. What do you think of Thibodeau keeping in many of the starters in towards the end, particularly Randall and RJ?
Mm. Yeah, I'm not really a fan of it when there's a clear opportunity to take them out. Um, I know their minutes aren't super high, but yeah, it's a blowout. I still don't really understand Tom's rationale behind
Yeah.
it. I know he's probably worried. Knicks have blown games before, but there's clear situations where it's 3 minutes left, and it's like you can take them out. They're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
not going to blow a 20-point lead in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe we're early in the season, EJ, so maybe we haven't had a lot of practice. Um,
That's a good point.
yeah,
That's a really
day
good
off
point.
between, but yeah, it's still no excuse for it. Me personally, what are your thoughts behind seeing that still?
Yeah, I spent like the last, once we hit the 8 minute mark, I try to write notes furiously, like, what I see in terms of rotations, in terms of defense, in terms of rotations, in terms of substitutions, any little thing that's like of note or importance. I'm paying attention to what's happening in the
Mm,
stands. And, once we got to the 8 minute mark and the lead had gone to be around 20, 21 points, I stopped really writing like really close notes. But then I see his rotation patterns and you start seeing the
mm,
subs be subbed in again and RJ still on the floor, and that started just raising questions for me, the why.
yeah.
And I think that's one of those questions that I wish Tom did a better job of explaining the why he'll leave subs out on in blowouts, particularly because the Knicks haven't had that many blowout opportunities. And it's an
Mm,
opportunity to like see other players to rest your starters, especially if you had such hectic travel, which again Clyde alluded to. It's a very weird thing to do, but again, like when we've been texting, I've been saying this team is a very weird team. It's a very inconsistent team, but nevertheless, tonight it was a really satisfying performance, especially because RJ and Julius were able to turn it off in the second half. And kudos to Mitch.
mm.
Kudos to Mitch. That first half, the energy that he
Oh,
brought, it was truly impressive. Like the other starters seemed to be a step slow. Again, we don't
mm,
know why. It might have been against that transportation, but Mitch seemed to have taken a different flight because the energy he brought tonight really set the tone and didn't let Charlotte take advantage of any Knicks sluggishness that may have existed prior to the start of the second half.
Yeah, you said it, man. Yeah, Mitch was a beast. And I think
Yeah.
Charlotte was a team that there was talk that would be interested in Mitch, giving him money. Maybe
Mhm.
they didn't end up coming to the party and Mitch felt offended a little bit, wanted to give them a nice payback. Because
Yeah.
Charlotte still are a team missing that, that true starting big man.
No.
But yeah, we mentioned consistency. This team's best and worst has been far apart. And I think shortening this rotation and also coming to, a decision where we're going to go this direction with the bench now, with defensive-minded players, with Deuce now, and Obi getting out now, with Jericho coming in. I'm looking for our bench defense to go to another level.
Absolutely.
No knock on Obi, but Sims is a better defender than him, and Deuce McBride, his impact has been pretty clear to see now in these 3 games, and I'm starving to see more.
Absolutely.
There was times when our offense did stall a little bit, but let's see
Mhm.
how it goes. If we can contain the other team from scoring, then we're going to still be right there to win a lot of these games. EJ, and let me just bring up the standings right now.
Oh yeah, this is big, man. This is big. Go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, there you see the Knicks are back to 500, 13 and 13, and in 7th seed right now, ladies and gentlemen, right there between the Hawks, the Nets, Indiana, above the Raptors, above Philly, above Miami. I mean,
Whoa.
take it
Oof.
away.
Oof. Bro, I was following your Twitter. Yeah, please everyone like, subscribe, Knicks Buzz, like, subscribe, Knicks Buzz on Twitter as well. And one of the things, what's up, Tariq? One of the things that CT was talking about, one of the things that CT was talking about via Twitter is, he called it in the beginning of the season. We had this conversation with B-Ball Breakdown. We had this conversation with a couple other big B writers. We talked about like which teams did we feel weren't the same teams or top tier teams. And CT said it, like he had questions about the Heat. He had questions about the Raptors. The one team that and we didn't call, the one team that we assumed that they would be better than what they are right now were the 76ers. But I think it's at this point now where we can really start having real conversations about
Yeah,
how good are the Heat. Like we can really start to have
yeah,
those conversations. And the other team that CT was all over and continues to be all over, you can check the records, you can check the evidence is right there, the receipts are there. He's been talking about the Bulls the entire season. And so this is what happens. You just can't evaluate our team, our favorite team, our orange and blue just by themselves. You have to be looking at what's happening with other teams. And at this point, we're almost close to the 33% mark of the season. A team is starting to be what a team is going to be. So is this the season where we see the Heat not really make that much of a run? Is this the season where Chicago decides to sell because of how much they invested a couple of seasons ago? So does that then benefit the Knicks in a way where they're in a higher playoff position? So this is very interesting. What's happening?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, every team goes through its lumps, and we're seeing like the weight of expectations on a lot of teams like Philly, Miami. One of the biggest factors why I considered them a team to slide was their age. I think
mhm.
so much relying on Jimmy Butler and how many minutes has he played in the last 2, 3 seasons. It's a lot for him to carry, I think. But um, yeah, like Tariq says, fans were obviously panicking about bad losses. I think, which doesn't help things, but it's also a big thing to do with where you're sitting in the standings. The standings are so bunched up right
Yeah,
now. The fact
yeah,
that the Knicks have won 3 straight, you see
yeah,
the impact it has. Now we're in 7th.
yeah.
Um, had we not won these 3, would be jockeying still with the play-in spot. But let me put you on the hot seat right now, EJ.
Yeah, sure.
With these changes and these 3 wins, are you sold that we've seen a real change now and this is very sustainable? Or are you in the middle? Are you sort of like, or let me just see a little bit more, or are you like not sold?
That's a good question, bro. I mean, I really started having, and we didn't have a chance to talk about this offline, but I really started having moments of reflection during during the Atlanta game. Because a couple of times during the Atlanta game, MSG flashed the playoffs,
Mm.
the Eastern Conference standings, and you saw a couple of nights ago that the difference between Atlanta, which I believed at the time was in the fifth seed or sixth seed, and the Knicks at the time, who were like in the ninth seed, it was like a game or two.
Yeah.
And that's like when you really look at Atlanta, when you look at Chicago, when you look at Philly right now, and the Knicks, these are teams that are 500 teams. 500 teams are incredibly exasperating. They're incredibly frustrating because they'll give you moments where you start to believe in them. They'll give you moments where you start to say, I swear off my allegiance and my fandom, I can't deal with them anymore because they're wildly inconsistent. So to ask me the question as to what do I believe in terms of the Knicks, I believe they're going to have stretches like this where they're like, oh, there's a lot of potential here. And
Yeah.
then there'll be moments where you're just like, no, this is a very average team, especially when we start playing better teams that are more consistent, that have a superstar that, can take over a game in the fourth quarter, who'll get the benefit of the call with the refs. And I think we have a couple of those games coming up. So we'll be right back here because this team seems to be a 500 level team where we'll get frustrated again. So unless there is some sort of secret move or they're growing, vibranium under the garden floor, and they're going to feed that to Julius, where he'll catapult and become like, the next a top 10 player. I think this is indicative of what the team is going to be all season long. We're going to have some great moments. We're going to have some frustrating moments, and we're going to kind
Yeah.
of be in that 500 range.
Yeah. I sort of am leaning right now. I hear what you're saying. I'm sort of leaning towards I'm sold, and I'm in the middle of I need to see a bit more.
Hmm.
But I'm pretty confident saying now that I think our best and our worst will be closer together. Will be more consistent with this defensive lineup. I think
Yeah.
the issue was we were allowing teams to score so easily. We were putting up points quite comfortably, but I feel like the toughness Deuce McBride adds and the more confidence he gets, playing regular minutes,
Hmm.
is going to be a great thing for this team. IQ is just an amazing defender now, point of attack,
Yeah.
and
Rebounding.
he's rebounding. You said it. He's rounding out to being just a great all round player off the bench now, and I think his trade value is just going to heat up
Yeah.
now, getting
Yeah.
it astronomically. There's so many teams that would love an IQ coming off their bench,
Yeah.
and Mitch is getting more consistent. With him staying healthy, I think the three-headed monster. If Julius Randle and RJ and Brunson can become more consistent each and every night together, like where they're all performing and all playing well. Um, definitely we could be in the top of the play-in playoff picture. Um, Look at this stretch coming up, EJ, with Sacramento at MSG, then a
Hmm.
struggling Chicago with a lot of storylines, a lot of rumors swirling in
Yeah.
Chi-Town,
Yeah.
and then a huge matchup at Indiana, who are overachieving at the moment in the fifth seed. What are you seeing from this stretch coming up? Do you think things are opening up, possibly?
I think this is so we have Sacramento at the Garden. We have the Bulls 2 games back to back. The Pacers and the Warriors. I think this will be an interesting stretch. And again, I don't know.
Mm.
This is what concerns me about the team. You tend to be a little bit more optimistic. I tend to be more pessimistic, um, as Berman said. Um, I
Skeptical.
skeptical. Yeah, skeptical is
Yeah,
probably the right word.
yeah,
There are games where I feel like tonight we both felt like the Knicks should have won, and there were moments where you're just like, oh no, I don't know. So a part of me wants to think, especially with what's happening in Chicago, those are 2 games the Knicks should pick up. you
Yep.
know. And in terms of Sacramento, just going quickly to Sacramento, uh, that's a those are games that maybe the Knicks should win. Um, but that's my concern is that I almost never feel like this is a guaranteed win. Although I do agree with you, there is way more consistency the past few games. The defense has
Mm.
been locked. The defense has been on lock, and we can't sleep on that Hartenstein and Jericho Sims. They showed me something tonight with the ability to present interior defense in a way that we not necessarily have seen um, throughout the course of the season. So it's going to provide somewhat of a dip in offense, or in terms of like a dip in like fast break points, but and transition offense. But I will say, and you can guys help me out here in the chat, that there is something potentially exciting about the Knicks becoming more consistent. And one quick point too. Remember when we started off the season, we were doing our preseason previews. One of the things we said is that you have to give the team about 20 to 25 games to see what it's going to be, and we're roughly around that mark now. So it is fascinating to
Mm.
see what happens the next 10 games.
Yep. Nah, man, fams, I'm on the road. Grind it out. Team no sleep out here. I'm in a different city, location undisclosed. Got a beautiful wedding to attend to tonight, but can't miss this for Knicks Nation out here. EJ holding me down. Appreciate you.
Of
And
course, team.
yeah, I just got to jump for one split second, open the door for a fam, and then I'll be back. Yep, just hold
Also,
us down.
I got you. I got you.
Yep.
Let's while CT's taking care of some business, please, everyone, take a moment. Knicks Buzz, we represent. This is quality content. This is content for mature Knicks fans. No yelling, no screaming. We aren't emotional. We're logical, rational fans. So take a moment, please hit like, subscribe, and follow Knicks Buzz. Please support us. Forward this to someone. We're live right now. We're just going to shout out some people in the chat as we speak. Some of your comments. We're going to talk about big task at hand. CT, the streets are buzzing. Randall plays like a superstar on the road for some strange reason. Well, I mean, it's a different generation of ball players. Big task. You have to realize that players hear all of the criticism. My favorite player, Patrick Ewing, all time. He played at a time where there was no social media, where you didn't have Twitter, you didn't have IG, you didn't have Facebook, you didn't have all of these content creators constantly grinding on people. So I do think that to a certain extent, this has created a space for CT and myself to do what we love to do, for us to have a chance to connect with you guys. But in this generation, for ball players, there is a social emotional aspect of it where that can be a little bit difficult and overwhelming. So maybe that is one of the reasons why Randall plays at another level when he's on the road. But our boy CT is back. Um, Take it away, Captain. Can't hear you, bro. Still can't hear you. So while CT is getting that
Hey,
situated, yeah, there we go.
you got me? Yep,
Now we
sweet.
got you. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah, I was just about to say with Randall, much maligned player, but you got to give him a shout out. When he's on, he's on,
yeah,
and he deals with a lot. It's just
yeah.
the main issue with Julius has always been not being in the right role.
He's miscast. Yeah,
Julius Randle, yeah, he's miscast. Exactly.
yeah,
You talk about teams, watch these teams that'll put their hand up to try to get him, the Phoenix Suns, the Miami
yeah,
Heat. They're
yeah,
teams that he would fit into their picture great right
yeah.
now. Um, now him and Jalen Brunson are the perfect 2A player.
Mm-hmm.
2A player. They just would fit alongside even better a player that's a 1A, a player
Hey,
that's a 1A for a winning team.
CT.
Yeah.
There was a comment earlier that we definitely have to hit up. It was about Zach Levine. I don't
Zach
know if you wanted.
LaVine.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I
Trying to
think big
know where you're
task.
going with that.
Yeah, big
Yep.
task at hand. Question: Do you
Yep.
guys think of the whole? What do you guys think of the whole Zach Levine situation? What do you think, Cap?
So yeah, Zach LaVine, I love him as a player. I think he would fit into this picture great. Yep. What are we giving up though? His salary is a big salary. But yeah, big
Yeah.
upgrade, and he fits. You could have RJ back to the two. You have Brunson, RJ, Zach LaVine, Randall. That's it may not take you all the way, and I understand fans' apprehension, but to me, that's a clear top four. That's a top four team in the East. If we had Zach
Mm,
LaVine and we didn't touch any of our starters, let's say.
yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I think this is the issue that we're going to face now is that we all have players that we love. You know, like for example, I really like Obi. I really like Obi. There's just something so endearing about him. He seems like a great New York, like not a great player, but like a great
Yeah,
presence on the squad. But here's where we are, and CT made this point. It's a really sophisticated point. We're at the point now where because of the cap, players are going to start getting dealt because we can't re-sign every single player
yeah,
that we have, and
absolutely.
that's the reality. And I think the front office is aware of this, and so we might see moves just so that we have flexibility in the future. Like so, two contracts becoming one contract, three contracts becoming one contract, so that there's more salary cap flexibility. I would have to like look at the numbers and hear people who are better versed at this than myself, but does trading the right combination of pieces and create more flexibility long term if you're moving to a Zach LaVine. So if you're
Yeah,
trading three players, that's three separate contracts that can then be merged into one contract, one body on the roster. Does that allow us to then have a better capability to actually be willing to draft in the 2023 draft? There's so many different nuances to this. So I think it's really about a question of who are the pieces and what does this allow us to do in the future.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got to assess the trade as it presents. Like when I say that, I'm just looking at purely Zach LaVine on this team. Yeah, it has
Yeah,
to make business sense, of course.
absolutely.
I'm not trading three or four unprotected picks. No way. I'm
No, no, God, no,
not
no.
mortgaging the future. But if Bulls get really desperate and they want to blow it up, and maybe they would just prefer to get his salary off,
Hmm.
two unprotecteds, maybe Evan Fournier salary filler, two unprotecteds for that kind of talent upgrade. Yeah, it's something you got to consider. But he's just one name. I don't
Yeah,
think he's that this front office is like main preference. I
yeah.
don't think Zach LaVine is a guy they would uh, be planning on with that. I think it's probably a bigger name, but let's see. Um, let's see. And you made that great point again about the bench. With all of these guys that are going to need getting paid, and the Obi situation is even more convoluted now with Randall
Yeah.
playing more consistent and Obi now injured. IQ's value going up. Um, Hartenstein and Jericho Sims both performing. Like you could think maybe one of them's expendable. You know what? What do you think's on the horizon, and what would you want to see happen from EJ's perspective, and what do you think the front office is going to do with this trade deadline coming up?
Yeah, there's a big difference between what I would want to do and what I think is going to happen. I think that there are about
Mm,
three or four players who are going to be shipped out simply because, again, like really consolidating contracts in preparation for what might happen next season, or even leveraging, sure, I want to have a good night, buddy, or even having a chance at getting or being positioned for a future move. So I think
yep.
the four players who probably are going to be moved at some point during the season, Fournier, possibly, Rose, likely, um, Cam, clearly, and now I hate to say it, one of IQ or Obi maybe,
Yep.
just because like again at this point it's not about me saying I don't like them as players. It's about the contract situations that are forthcoming and like what they might possibly get net us in the future. And so that's why I said what I would want to do versus what I think is going to happen. But I think four of those
Mm.
five players are going to be moved at some point.
Yeah, and I think it's tough because fans like certain players, but I think this front office, like I said, Leon's mover and shaker. It's all about business for him. He was from the business world before becoming a president. He knows salary cap, he knows players' contracts,
Hmm.
all of that. And not to mention, to add to that, they've got Brock Aller, which is a chief strategist.
Hmm.
These guys have already been talking about Quickly and Obi's plan 2 years ago. They've already been discussing that. So these guys, they're not married to any player. You know, they attached RJ in a trade. So
Yeah, yeah, that's
nothing,
gangster.
honestly, nothing would surprise me. I'm not saying I want to ship any of these guys out. I'm just trying to foreshadow and get this conversation going in terms of what we're going to see. And I think Cam Reddish at the top of the tree. We're gonna we're gonna see him moved. I think the Lakers, Miami are interested. It's going to be quite a few. I think the trade market's going to be decent for Cam, but for Quickly right now, he's showing me that he's growing still. He's got a higher ceiling perhaps,
Hmm.
and I want to keep Quickly absolutely now. I'd probably be more open to moving Obi.
Yeah, you know what? I think tonight said a lot. Tonight's game said a lot. If you think about, if you think about garbage time, who was the only non-rotation player to play? Steve.
Yep.
That says a lot. That says a lot. So you have a 20-point lead, 2 minutes left, 3 minutes left. It's not Derrick Rose. It's not Cam. It's obviously Ryan Arcidiacono wasn't doesn't suit up. It wasn't Derrick Rose. Like you have options, and clearly, like what the Knicks has said tonight is like, oh, even in a blowout, Cam's not playing. Even in a blowout, Evan Fournier is not. Okay, in what world? Here's what I mean, and this is why it's kind of obvious. They're kind of telegraphing what they're going to do. It in what world does it seem like Evan Fournier is going to play for the Knicks in another game this season? They've been losing
Yep.
by 20. He hasn't gotten in. They've been winning by more than 20. He hasn't gotten in. So
Yep.
these are kind of like what we're talking about in terms of like, they're kind of tipping their hand. And I do agree with you. I think that this trade deadline is going to be incredibly busy. Like I am going to have Woj. I'm going to be as much as pop. I'm going to like be refreshing Twitter like every 2 seconds because I think it's going to be a hyper active trade deadline season
Yep.
this year.
Yeah, and with the draft in mind, that's a huge element in this situation because we have so many picks.
Hmm.
You know, we may have the Dallas and our own, and maybe even the Washington one, and we need the roster spots if we're going to make selections. So there's going to be a lot of situations, and we'll have plenty of shows that we could talk about it more. But
Hmm.
for now, I just want to say this about tonight and the rotation moving forward. I'm really high on it with this Titan rotation because I love Sims. I love Sims getting opportunity.
Yeah.
Hart at the 4, Sims at the 5 kind of situation. And I love, Deuce McBride. He's a guy we drafted and his contract's got one more year. And, to see what we have in him would be a great move for the future and please a lot of Knicks fans. He hasn't quite gotten that opportunity ever since he's been a New York Knick. He's
Yeah.
gone down to the G League. He's lit it up. He's had some big games for the big club and then got injured or something else happened. And now it's like Tom Thibodeau's believing in him, and that's the rotation moving forward now, for better or for worse. I think it's a good balance between
Yeah.
IQ, getting enough shots off the bench, Deuce McBride playing the defense, Grimes and RJ able to play with the bench unit a bit more,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the minutes are nicely evenly distributed. What stands out from the box score tonight? And give all the flowers you want for anyone.
Hey, I will give flowers too. So the first set of flowers. So we're gonna play not the Bachelor tonight. We're gonna play the Nixular. So first set of flowers obviously goes to perhaps one of the team's best players. Not perhaps, but definitely one of the team's best players. Definitely Julius Randle. Here are your flowers, your flowers, your flowers, your flowers. Really efficient night. Really in control for most of the night. Not much we can complain about in terms of Julius's performance. Second set of flowers on the Nixular, not the Bachelor, but the Nixular. RJ Barrett, Rowan. Rowan had a really strong game. There were some moments I was concerned again, first quarter, second quarter, where it seemed as if his game was not necessarily fully present, but then something turned on. Maybe they got their legs underneath them. But third quarter, fourth quarter, really marvelous. I said it all night, and I really think that he gets a lot of slack for his social media activity, but the third dozen flowers goes to our boy, Mr. Rebound. That will be one Mitchell Robinson. So active on the board, diving all over the floor. You have to give credit where credit is due. There's just something about his energy all night tonight. And there were times where I was like, yeah, just feed him. Just feed him the ball because he's the one with the most amount of energy. For right now, and we'll come back to some more players, but I want to give the final set of flowers, not on the Bachelor, but the Nick Schiller. I want to give the final set of flowers to Miles McBride. Deuce. Actually, I'm going to give two more. Deuce and Q Dot. Their energy tonight as well, that young, scrappy energy. There were a couple of plays that Deuce had where you could see, okay, this is why he's on this squad. This is why Tom Thibodeau has fallen in love with him. Q Dot, same thing. There was a drive to the basket. You could see the energy. His passing, there was some effort there. You could definitely see, okay, this is why Thibodeau really wants these guys to play. And I'm going to finish with this last thing. Guys, let's look at the roster. We have to be fair. Is he a perfect coach? Nope. But I'm about to say something really crazy. Thibodeau has played and benched almost every person we've wanted him to bench. And he's played players that we thought he would never play this season. Miles McBride is in the rotation now. Grimes is in the rotation. Yep. We've seen this season Randle and Obi. Tonight we saw Hartenstein and Sims. Cam got burned. Now you can hate on him, but at the same time, at this point in the season, we're almost 33% of the season done. It's crazy to think, but Thibodeau has played almost every player at some point a significant amount of time. And oh, by the way, Derrick Rose has not really cracked the rotation.
From the get-go.
From the get-go. So this is something when we do the breakdown of this season, whether he gets fired or whether he's like retained for another season, that is something, if we're going to be honest, critical, logical, not emotional, but logical, not emotional fans, we have to remember that at this point in the season, there's been a lot of mixing and changing up of the lineups. So that's a very fascinating point. So Thibodeau, you get one flower.
Point. Yep. I've even seen some people that aren't in favor of Thibs, give him some props in terms of some things this season, the minutes distribution, being more open to playing guys that were on the outer last season, being more open. To me, the knocks I had on Thibodeau were his schemes, more offensive schemes, and just wanting to play a different way. It didn't have too much to do with rotations this season, because like you said, there isn't that much you could argue about outside of little ticky-tack stuff like should he have taken a player out sooner and sticking to the template rotations and things. But in terms of who he's playing, I got no issue with that at all. That's why I'm almost still so shocked to be saying this, that Deuce McBride was chosen ahead of Cam Reddish now. Deuce McBride, he was the ultimate guy I thought would be situational all season long, and he'd probably be one of the top guys I thought to be traded. But here he is playing ahead of Derrick Rose. So
can you say that again?
Talk about no edicts. I wanted to make this point. I don't think Leon Rose put any edicts on Tom Thibodeau at all. That was completely true what he said in the interview, because Evan Fournier isn't Thibs' guy, and Thibs eliminated him. If there was an optics edict, Leon Rose would be forcing Tom Thibodeau to play Evan Fournier. Leon Rose traded for Cam Reddish. He would be forcing Tom Thibodeau to play Cam Reddish.
Wow.
So this is all Tom Thibodeau's decision. He's given him full autonomy, and I think Tom's still calling all the shots. And I think Ian Begley's reporting that he has what was it? Immense confidence, immense loyalty in Tom
Mm.
Thibodeau. I think that's completely true. Maybe Tom Thibodeau is further away from getting sacked than we think.
Wow. 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 Yeah, I mean, and when you have a 3-game winning streak like this,
Yeah,
it makes it harder unless things fall apart drastically. And we thought we were on the precipice of that. We thought that after the Mavs win, the way that the Mavs won, and how we all came together last weekend, and we were all despondent. We thought after what happened with the Pistons, the way that they lost with the Bucks, they were hanging in there, and just the overall tone of like the previous 5 games, we thought that it was possible that he was on the brink of being fired. But
yeah,
here's the thing, he this it gives it harder. It gets harder now to justify and say, okay, we're going to get rid of you. And I will say it's fascinating because Tom Thibodeau has been here several times at this exact point where we're already discussing towards the midpoint of the season. Is he going to get fired? This is exactly what happened. This is what's happened several times during the course of his tenure here as the head coach of the New York Knicks. But there just are points where it's just like, nope, the team seems to rally together, put together a series of wins, and a series of wins that are kind of impressive in terms of how consistent and in terms of how defensive minded those wins were. So yeah,
yeah.
maybe you're right. Maybe he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, well, yeah, we keep talking about how it feels like this season's been going on forever, but we're still
Yeah,
so early in the season, and maybe they just want to let him see out the year and make a decision at the end of the year, and I'm okay with that because I hate disruptions in the middle of a season. You know, the guy you bring in sort of like compromises future decisions in the organization and all of that, and it sort of makes things messy.
yeah,
Um, but if he's playing a rotation I'm okay with, then I can continue with this.
yeah.
And let's see, because there's no longer this argument that he's killing the future. He's playing Deuce McBride and Quentin
Mm,
Grimes and Emmanuel Quickly ahead of any of these veterans that aren't going to be here much longer.
yeah,
So to me, that's not really hurting our future so much. He's not playing Randall 43 minutes. Um,
yeah,
he's not even playing Brunson that many minutes. So
yeah,
for me, yeah, that gets a shout out for me, I guess. And you mentioned the Deuce McBride, the Grimes, and the Quickly thing. That's been absolutely one of the key reasons why we've looked solid in the last 3 games. I keep saying you have to just make it uncomfortable for the other team. You don't have to be a lockdown defender. You don't have to get 5 steals, 3 blocks. Just make them miss.
yeah,
Just get the defensive rebound, and we're seeing them miss more shots. These other teams were coming into MSG and just hitting everything,
yeah,
and
yeah,
now we're picking guys up a little bit more. And I still feel like RJ can be much better on the defensive side, but um, well, yeah, with this stretch coming up, fam, we're definitely going to know where we sit with the trade period and everything with these games on screen right now, with the next 4 that are very winnable, and then the 3 after that against some tougher matches. Yeah, I think this is really going to create more clarity um, with that situation, and obviously with Obi out now, it's unfortunate. Rest up, please.
yeah, yeah,
Hopefully it's not too long, but Jericho gets that opportunity that he's been
yeah,
wanting now.
yeah. That was fascinating. I mean, when
Mm,
once we saw the Hartenstein Sims combination, it creates a lack of offensive punch in some respects. But at the same time, like, there are a couple of plays where you actually saw the interior being defended and defended heartily. Like you saw, like there was an aggression in terms of trying to block shots, in terms of trying to get
mm,
rebounds, and doing what some of the better defensive teams in the league do. Like, so for example, when I think of Milwaukee and Milwaukee's ability to create almost impenetrable lanes And we saw that when the Knicks played Milwaukee, that they would kind of start to hesitate. They would have like, moments where they're like thinking about it, like, oh no, I'm not going to even try to drive into the lane because I know my shot will be blocked. There's a potential if you pair Hartenstein and Sims together, creating that kind of defense. Obviously, it won't be on par with the Milwaukee or on par with the Cleveland when everyone is fully healthy in Cleveland. But the ability to then use your strengths to weaken other aspects of your opponent's game, that is definitely a possibility. And just one other quick point too.
Yeah,
Um, like there's an extent to which, there are coaching issues, but then at the same time, there are limitations sometimes our own players have, our own, favorite players have. So I really do like RJ, for example, but like sometimes RJ's vision, leads to like missed opportunities. So,
yeah,
so like that's just something you just have to accept. Sometimes it's not a coaching thing. That's just that this is the player, this is what the player is. There might be ways in which the player will grow and surpass some of these limitations at this moment. Or sometimes these are just the limitations that will be indicative of the entire career that this player will
mm,
have. So, um,
yeah,
you know, I would hope that, Tibbs is mindful of this and says, okay, this is a weakness of ours, but I'm going to use the strength of ours to to supplant what these weaknesses might be.
yeah. And one shout out to Tariq as well. One point he's continuously made is that you can't cheat the growing pains.
Hmm.
It's unfortunate, but yeah, we're in the biggest market, and we hate when we lose, and fans do overreact absolutely
Hmm.
because of our passion is second to none for the
Yeah,
team. But
yeah,
you can't just skip growing pains. There's going to be games where players stink it up, young players as well. You got to be patient with them, not not just ship them all out. And I think
yeah,
IQ's at the top of that tree. Like again, he's showing you things that there's a reason why other teams around the league are interested. You know,
yeah,
in one of our own, and he's becoming an all-rounded player. I know the business decision behind it about the money, things like that, but you keep him until you absolutely have to entertain something because his value might even just go up.
yeah,
He's going to have a huge role next to Deuce McBride, and those two guys playing D is absolutely going to be huge for this team. Locking teams down together with Grimes as
yeah.
well.
Oh,
And
yeah,
EJ, we always say this. I love two-way players.
yeah, yeah,
There's nothing more valuable in the league than a player that plays two ways, both sides
yeah,
of the ball. And Quentin Grimes is that guy. IQ's that guy right now.
yeah,
And also Deuce McBride, if his offense can go up a little bit to meet his defense,
yeah.
he could be one of those guys. And I
Well,
hope RJ Barrett.
yeah, bro. I mean, I think like, and you asked this question, I think last week, like, what are the takeaways from the season that are positives? And I'll say this, like, and I had some time to think about it, I had some time to chop it up in my mind. Um,
Yeah.
and I'll present it this way. So CT, from the beginning of this season to now, do you think the value of Deuce McBride, has gone up or down?
Up.
That's a win.
Yep.
Um,
Great
since
point.
since the start of the season to now, do you think that the value of Jericho Sims has gone up or down?
Up.
That's a win. We
Yep.
talk about like tradable assets. We talk about assets that appreciate in value. And now we've just mentioned two players. If you just look at what we thought of them at the beginning of the season versus where they are right now, and they're more valuable. Their games have improved. That means that people around the league are looking at them and saying, "Hey, we can do something with them." And all of a sudden, that creates more opportunities. So here's another example. From the start of the season to now, has the value of IQ gone up or down?
Up.
Yeah,
Massively up.
yeah.
Yep.
And so we might take a loss on Evan Fournier,
Yep.
but IQ, Deuce, you know, Hartenstein, Hartenstein is Hartenstein. I think he's always had some value. Jericho Sims, that to me, if we weren't going to win a championship, if players improve and their value improves, that's a win for me. That's a win.
Mm. Yep. Yeah, and obviously there's talk that the Knicks won't ship IQ unless there's a first rounder involved.
Hmm.
which is kind of like me. To me, it's just kicking the can down the road because he was a first round pick, but he's shown potential to be that two-way guy, and I don't think IQ's value is going to get any lower as
No.
well. And you mentioned Deuce McBride, Sims, their value can get higher. This is what I wanted the Knicks to do for so long, just like the Miami Heat. You know, we
Hmm.
had the Duncan Robinsons come out of nowhere, get paid.
Yeah.
The Strauss, those guys, the heroes they drafted. There's nothing wrong with if you're going to stink, you may as well stink playing players that are young and that you drafted, right? In hopes that one or two of them become even better. The issue I had was with the Fourniers and the those kind of signings that weren't necessary at the time. You know, you drafted Quentin Grimes the same off
Hmm.
season that you gave Fournier the bag.
Yeah.
So I think this organization, yeah, hopefully the front office is putting more of this imprint of this philosophy. And look where we are. The power rankings, the Raptors, the Philly, Heat, and everyone else below were predicted to be better than the Knicks,
Wow.
basically. And here we are in seventh seed. We're just getting some consistency now with three wins. And let's see what happens with this stretch coming up.
Yeah.
EJ, yeah, I
Yeah.
really want to see more of this rotation. I'm pleased with this kind of play. It's not pretty all the time, but I'd rather stop the other team from scoring than us put up 130 and give up 133.
And let's be honest. Like, when we had the conversation in the beginning of the year, um, we spent a lot of time, and we spent a lot of time talking Knicks, but like, some of those other teams, they're like, my version of your Chicago was Atlanta. I've
Yep.
always been leery, and every time we talk, I'm like, I don't trust Atlanta. I don't trust Atlanta. The fact that there are questions about the relationship between Trey Young and Nate McMillan, your star player and the head coach not necessarily seeing eye to eye. We don't know the extent to which there are issues that are lingering there. Um, I think they're recently like what 3-7 or something like that in the last 10. Um, that presents not only opportunities for other teams, but it presents opportunities for the Knicks. Um, so we're not winning a championship, but I do honestly think that
Mm.
one of the big issues that Leon Rose had is that season where Tom Thibodeau won Coach of the Year, where we're the fourth seed, it created confusion as to what we were, not just in that moment, but what we were going to be for the next 2 or 3 seasons. And so, again, I think that there's been a recalibration that's taken place, and maybe we'll have some clarity in terms of what the direction is going to be by the trade deadline. And I think Dirty Dancer mentioned this. December 15th is next week. That is the
Oh, oh,
first opportunity you get to
huge.
trade that players who signed a contract over the offseason. And so
Yep.
again, one of the reasons why CT and I are starting to talk about, contracts and things that might get moved, players that might get moved, is because you're going to probably start hearing in different spaces more and more trade buzz, more and more trade scenarios, and it's going to pick up very quickly. February will be here before we know it.
Yep. Yep. And we mentioned Obi going down. There'll be a lot of other teams, players, uncertainty with injuries and other teams. And there's going to be a huge fork in the road for most teams deciding to go all in to make playoffs or go the
Hmm.
other way and peel it back for a Victor Scoot Henderson sweepstakes.
Hmm.
Because with the standing so bunched up, you
Yeah.
could if you can get in that sixth, seventh overall selection in the tank standings, that could get you the odds, which could get you into the top two.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of GMs keenly looking and evaluating. But I'm happy the Knicks are playing, the young core, and it's been great to see them string off three wins in a row. Um, Short show tonight. We're going to get ready to wrap this thing up. We'll be back obviously next game. Huge, big one, big test at home against Sacramento. I'm going to say we pull out the dub, but it's going to be a great test. I want to see more of this lock you down, grind it out style. And Jericho Sims and Hartenstein playing. I'm pleased with that situation. Prayers up for Obi. Hopefully he heals soon, EJ, and let's get it.
Definitely. Peace to the chat.